The Bernie Mac Show is a sitcom from the early 2000s about a famous comedian that is suddenly introduced to parenthood when he gains custody of his sister's 3 kids. The show's unique style and interesting commentary on parenting was well received by both critics and audiences.
It's not important that I be those kids' friend. My job is to be their parent. Let them know that I'm there for them always.
It won almost every award a TV show can win.
And the Emmy goes to Larry Wilmore, The Bernie Mac Show!
The Peabody Award goes to The Bernie Mac Show for its wise and hilarious perspective on the struggles of modern parenting.
But for some reason, this gem of a show is rarely talked about these days. Well, I'm here to change that. Hi, I'm T1J.
Follow me.
And I just rewatched all 5 seasons of The Bernie Mac Show. It should definitely be in the conversation more often when we're talking about great nostalgic sitcoms. So I'm gonna make you listen to me talk about it for a little while. So in the year 2000, this movie came out. It was a stand-up comedy film. It was called The Original Kings of Comedy. You probably heard of it. It had comedy from Steve Harvey, Cedric the Entertainer, D.L. Hughley, and Bernie Mac. It was a big hit. People loved it. I loved it. This guy, his name's Larry Wilmore, he loved it too. In particular, he really loved Bernie Mac's hilarious stories about having to raise his drug addict sister's 3 terrible children.
I got my sister's children living with me now. I'm about to go crazy like a motherfucker around here, you know? See, my sister on drugs. I ain't ashamed to tell you. Some of your family members fucked up too around here.
Larry was watching that and he thought to himself, that should be a TV show. And you know what? He was right. So in 2001, The Bernie Mac Show was born. Bernie plays a fictional version of himself who ends up with custody of his sister's 3 children while she goes off to drug rehab.
Yeah, my sister's on drugs. That's okay. Some of your family members messed up too.
I don't want to victim blame the kids too much. They definitely had a difficult upbringing, but they are a handful to say the least. Vanessa is a bratty teenager with a bad attitude.
It ain't about the phone. It's about the simple things in life, about teaching you respect. You understand?
Whatever.
Whatever.
Jordan is kind of a wimpy crybaby, but he's also diabolical.
Why don't you want me? Well, it turns out I'm allergic to 100% solid gold. I'll go get my piggy bank.
And little Brianna puts up a sweet face for Uncle Bernie, but turns into a demon behind closed doors.
Brianna, would you two stop it? Jordan's holding the bowl.
We'll talk more about all the kids a little bit later. The Bernie Mac Show is a single camera sitcom with no laugh track, which is pretty commonplace now, but at the time, the style was rarely used for network sitcoms. There were a handful of single camera sitcoms in the early days of television, but after the overwhelming success of All in the Family in the 70s, pretty much every sitcom followed suit, being shot on a stage with multiple cameras in front of an audience. We would start to see the more cinematic single camera style occasionally on premium channels like HBO, but at the time, the only popular show on mainstream network TV that used this format was Malcolm in the Middle, which had just debuted a year before The Bernie Mac Show. So alongside Malcolm in the Middle, The Bernie Mac Show was actually one of the programs that helped to repopularize this style that would very soon become a staple of TV comedy. The creator of The Bernie Mac Show, Larry Wilmore, was no stranger to unique TV formats. Before starting The Bernie Mac Show, he helped create the groundbreaking Emmy-winning animated show, The PJs, so he was given the freedom to try some interesting things.
We were right at the height of reality television, just starting to come in. Real World had been on for years, and I wanted to do a show where it felt like we were observing this family rather than the action being pushed at us.
Keep in mind, this was back when reality TV was still this new, interesting thing. We hadn't quite figured out how trash that genre would soon become. Just like Wilmore implied, the show is designed to make the viewer feel like an observer or a fly on the wall. A lot of the time, the shots are composed to look like we're almost spying on the characters, like a hidden camera secretly recording these people's lives. And even outside of that, there are so many cool shots and creative choices. Like this scene that visualizes Bernie's struggle to keep up with the kids by having him moving normally while they zip around at super speed behind him. There's even a claymation episode, an obvious nod to Wilmore's previous work. The main source of conflict on the Bernie Mac show involves Bernie trying to balance his old school way of thinking with modern ideas about good parenting.
You know, America, Bernie Mac is old school and proud of it. But things are different now. And maybe my way isn't for everybody.
I am getting the belt.
Sometimes it's just what you need.
Bernie is a complex and flawed character. He's cocky and self-assured.
Uncle Bernie, were you a nerd too?
Hell no, all man. Came out circumcised.
But also stubborn and thin-skinned.
In the very depths of my soul, deeper than deep, I blame them kids.
He's strict and overbearing when it comes to the children.
Honey, we eat dinner in 20 minutes. I'm not hungry.
Well, if you ain't hungry, that give you more doggone time to go up in there and study. And give me that walk. Give it up.
But also desperately seeks their affection and love. As far as I can tell, it was Bernie's idea to take the kids into his home. Luckily for him, his wife Wanda is extremely supportive and quickly becomes fond of the children herself. Wanda is a highly competent businesswoman who usually ends up being the voice of reason that helps Bernie realize when he's acting a little too crazy.
Above the line, kids. Below the line, off limits.
Bernie,
Yes,
can I talk to you?
sure. Remember, above the line, kids. Below the line, off limits. Say it.
I can't believe you.
What?
Those kids are not your roommates.
I know that. Roommates pay rent.
So we've got a familiar sitcom setup. We've got the dysfunctional family with the goofy dad and the smart hot wife that basically has to parent the husband. But the Bernie Mac show plays with these tropes in a cool way. Most obviously, Bernie and Wanda are not these kids' actual parents, and they have no kids of their own. Before the kids showed up, Bernie was used to the freedom of his celebrity lifestyle, and Wanda was hyper-focused on her corporate career. They kind of have no idea how to be parents, at least in the beginning. Bernie tries to implement the hardcore old school upbringing that he grew up with, but quickly finds the kids unreceptive to it.
Baby girl, find your brother and tell him I said get his skinny butt down here right now. And now back to you.
I hate it here.
You ain't gotta stay here. There's ain't nobody keeping you. You can leave. Matter of fact, I'll help you.
Wanda is nicer to the kids than Bernie is because she enjoys being perceived as the cool auntie, but when the kids start acting up, she's overwhelmed by the responsibility and usually fails at keeping them in line.
You're not to help. I am getting off. Now. I am. Brianna, please. Get in that tub now.
So the show is really about Bernie and Wanda learning the difficult task of becoming a parent, and among other things, learning the happy medium between being too strict and being too forgiving. Another thing the Bernie Mac show has in common with Malcolm in the Middle is the theme of breaking the fourth wall and speaking directly to the audience. Like Malcolm, Bernie constantly acknowledges and addresses the camera directly in every episode. Most of the time, this takes the form of Bernie sitting in his den and talking to the audience, who he refers to as America.
Now you hold on, America. I wouldn't say kids were like cockroaches. I wouldn't do that. But I just compare the two species and you make the call.
Which is honestly pretty cool as a viewer. It kind of makes you feel like you're a part of the story. These scenes are similar to talking head scenes in mockumentary comedies like The Office, where the characters comment on things that happen during the episode. But it's actually not quite like The Office. Outside of Bernie, the characters don't know they're on a TV show.
What you looking at?
Well, sometimes they do, I don't know, it's weird. But in those den scenes, it's not usually Bernie commenting on something that happened at a different time. It's much more surreal than that. Usually he's reacting to something literally as it's happening to him elsewhere in real time, which implies that the den might be like a symbolic, figurative place or like a visual representation of Bernie's inner thoughts, which would be fine. Lots of TV sitcoms have surreal elements like that. But sometimes important plot points happen during those den scenes. And sometimes Bernie literally breaks the fourth wall and gains information from that he wouldn't have known otherwise. I truly almost made the whole video just about this aspect of the show. Like, is Bernie Mac some kind of time lord or something? There's also these captions that pop up on the screen all the time that give like snarky commentary that is clearly the point of view of someone other than Bernie, like some even more omniscient observer.
Oh, come on. What the hell just happened in the car?
But then sometimes Bernie is aware of the captions.
Come on, America. How am I supposed to watch my words? What the hell is this?
I don't know, but I really need to stop because otherwise this will literally be the whole video. But those little quirks really made the show feel unique and creative. Even to this day, it stands out to me. I love sitcoms, but I will be the first to admit that they are sometimes just carbon copies of each other. And even though the Bernie Mac show did take inspiration from Malcolm in the Middle and reality TV, it was nice for there to be something a little bit different on TV. So I kind of roasted Bernie and Wanda's parenting earlier, but in fairness to them, they are dealing with some hellacious kids. Brianna, the baby of the bunch, is the apple of her Uncle Bernie's eye, and she uses this to her benefit.
I want to do that too.
Oh, baby, ain't no problem here. You can have anything you want. Whatever you want, just ask your Uncle Bernie here.
She starts off very sweet and innocent, but becomes meaner and more mischievous over time, all the while Bernie's still thinking of her as his sweet baby girl.
Hey, baby, come on, give me a hand.
Oh, I know where I like to put my hand on that little monster's rear end.
What you talking about? Knuckle?
No, your spoiled little princess.
Oh, get out of here, baby girl. That's ridiculous. You can't force something that perfect.
It gets so bad that it's actually suggested by a therapist that Brianna might have psychological issues due to her unstable upbringing.
Brianna wants to push you away before you leave her.
That's quasi. Leave her where?
Your sister's interactions with Brianna were colored by her drug usage. Sometimes she was loving and engaged, and other times she was emotionally unavailable. Brianna never knew which mother she was going to get.
Bernie eventually realizes that Brianna just needs to be disciplined and that he should stop letting her use her cuteness as a get-out-of-jail-free card.
But I guess I'm partly to blame because I spoiled you. Baby girl, Uncle Bernie was a little afraid that he was going to lose the love of his sweet baby girl.
To be fair, that is an adorable kid.
I don't want to be a sweet baby girl.
I understand.
I want to be a sweet big girl.
Jordan, the middle child, is kind of a terrifying evil genius.
My Thanksgiving's great till you turn 6. I'm 6. You are? What happens when you turn 6? Well, you're not a baby anymore. You have to sit at the kids' table. Boy, did I hate that. You're all alone with no one to talk to. And you have to eat parts of the turkey no one wants, like the beak and gizzards.
He's constantly running schemes and pulling pranks on everyone. But it seems he can dish it out, but not really take it.
Hey guys, anyone want to fly a kite? Oh my God. And the other one's calling me Ben Franklin.
Oh, but now that's better than Puddles, right?
You told her?
Bernie shows particular interest in Jordan as the only boy of the 3 kids. He wants to pass on to Jordan his ideas about what it means to be a man.
Look, I got a football. Got a pair of boxing gloves. Hey, look here. I got toy guns. We can play war.
But Jordan is more of a nerdy, sensitive kid, which Bernie initially perceives as weak and unmanly. Bernie's somewhat outdated ideas about masculinity are explored frequently on the show.
Jordan, you find something there you like?
Jazz dance.
Give me that. Give me him. Junior Scouts, it's gonna be for you.
Scouts before.
Because they take the jazz dance out of you and put a man inside you.
And Bernie constantly taunts and belittles Jordan for these perceived shortcomings.
You know that boy needs something, Wanda. He's soft.
He is not soft.
He is.
Jordan is a gentle soul.
This is a direct reference to Bernie's stand-up routine, where Bernie uses even more offensive language to describe his effeminate nephew.
I said, where you going? He said, to get some milk and cookies. He said it so funny, I wanted to hear it again. I said, get some what? He said, some milk and cookies. I love the motherfucker, but he's like, you know.
Bernie Mac's stand-up was known for being raunchy and vulgar. Let's just say if he was around today, Twitter would have probably tried to cancel him. But Larry Wilmore had a vision for how to translate that X-rated comedy into a family-oriented network sitcom.
Bernie was so raw in the clubs. If you were a watered down version of Bernie on TV, it just wasn't going to work because people didn't want to see that.
Right.
So rather than compete with that, I thought I'd show a different side of Bernie.
Regardless of what you think of Bernie Mac's comedy, it's obvious that his onstage persona was a character. This mean and cocky guy that you couldn't help but laugh at because of the funny way he talked and the shocking things that were coming out of his mouth.
My wife gonna tell me, I'm gonna get a young man. Go get the motherfucker. I don't give a fuck. Go get him. And I'll watch. That's why I'll watch.
It was distasteful to some, and we can be critical of it, but it should be said that this character did not seem very similar to the real man.
When I went home one day, I told my daughter, I said, baby girl, Boost was about 8? When I told her, I said, I might say some things, you might hear Dad say some things.
Maybe about 10.
But that's not Dad. They're jokes. And it does not matter as long as you know the truth.
In reality, Bernie Mac didn't even have a biological sister, much less a disappointing nephew that he shouted slurs at. In reality, Bernie was less angry and disrespectful than his stage counterpart. In fact, he was one of the most thoughtful and insightful public figures out there.
I don't want to do this on the strength of notoriety or things like that. I'm a clown. I've been called a clown all my life.
And you're happy with that?
I'm happy with it.
A clown?
I love it. But I'm secure with the fact that when I get through and I bring joy to people, and I make people laugh at something, Charlie, that comes from me and comes from my mindset, or something that I want to put into perspective, or sit there and say something that everybody afraid to say, but bring humor from it also. It's such a joy for me.
And by all accounts, he was also a generous and kind man that people loved working with.
What's up, children? Hi, Jen, baby.
And that was another cool thing about the show. It captured those irreverent aspects of the stand-up persona that people already loved.
You know, doggone well, you're not supposed to throw no candy. Matter of fact, you're not supposed to throw anything. I should have put a dent in your head the same way you did my car. It's all right for me to do that, Cooley? And you, baby girl, yeah, you just too cute. That's the only way you get away with it. But that's not gonna last. Usually last till you're around 6. What are you, 5 3/4? Yeah, then you be right along with them. And you know what? When you get with them, stop!
While sprinkling in moments inspired by Bernie Mac's real-life kindness and emotional intelligence.
Son, I am really proud of you.
Why? I got beat up by a girl.
And you hit her down on the ground, you did the right thing. You stopped yourself.
She looks really afraid. I mean, made me feel bad.
That's good. You know what that tells you? You're not a bully.
The character on the Bernie Mac show is much more interesting to me than the character from the stage. That's just me though. Many other performers and artists throughout history have enjoyed pushing the boundaries of what's considered acceptable, for better and for worse. The great video essayist Broe Deschanel has a dope series called Taboo on Screen, where she does a deep dive into several examples of this kind of boundary pushing in film.
Sometimes discomfort is necessary. Sometimes we need to hear ugly truths about ourselves. Sometimes, in order to be challenged, we need to be provoked. This is Taboo on Screen, only on Nebula.
This original series is only available on Nebula, by the way, which is our creator-owned video platform, and it's a perfect example of why we made Nebula in the first place. She talks about some pretty rough things in the series, like depictions of cannibalism and rape in movies. And if you couldn't tell from me bleeping that out, those are topics which tend to get flagged on YouTube, almost guaranteeing that you make no money from that particular video. You're kind of rolling the dice when you make videos like that on YouTube. But our amazing Nebula subscribers help us to make content like this that doesn't really work that well on YouTube, but still definitely deserves an audience. And it's not just Broe Deschanel, there's plenty of exclusive content on Nebula that you simply can't find anywhere else, made by creators you know and love from YouTube and other platforms. And even beyond that, you can watch all of our regular content on Nebula completely ad-free and often days or even weeks before it gets uploaded anywhere else. And the content on Nebula can be very neatly organized into different categories, making it very easy for you to find the exact type of content you're looking for. A contrast to the chaos that the YouTube homepage can be sometimes. If you'd like to support that kind of thing, consider consider signing up for Nebula. If you use my link nebula.tv/T1J, I can get you 40% off an annual plan. That's $30 for a full year of Nebula. That's a year of amazing content from your favorite creators, a lot of which you cannot find anywhere else. It's a great way to support me alongside an entire community of awesome independent creators. Now let's get back to the video. I've got one more kid to talk about. Probably the most interesting aspect of the Bernie Mac show is Bernie's tense relationship with Vanessa, the oldest of the three kids. Bernie is extra hard on her, partially because she's the oldest, but mostly because she's a teenage girl, and Bernie is the epitome of the overprotective father figure.
What's that on your lip, Nessa?
What are you talking about?
You know what I'm talking about. You wasn't born that color. Go in there and scrub that stuff off.
What's the big deal? All the girls at school wear lipstick.
Good, you be the only one that ain't pregnant. Now go in there and scrub it off, Nessa. Fast self.
He's harsh and domineering, but really Bernie is terrified because he knows how the world treats young women and he wants to protect Vanessa from it.
Baby, you better talk to her, especially when she come home pregnant. I'm not taking care of no more babies. You best believe that.
Come on, we done been through this before. Hasn't she proven herself to be responsible? When you gonna start trusting her?
I trust her, Wanda. So damn boys I don't trust.
He always takes it a little bit too far though, and Vanessa openly resents him because of how authoritarian he is.
What'd you say?
Nothing, Warden.
You can go in the room and join.
Better than listening to you.
Don't walk away from me, Nessa. Nessa!
This is different than the other kids. Brianna and Jordan misbehave pretty frequently, but as young kids, they mostly like Bernie and want his approval. He's pretty much the only real father figure they've ever had. But Vanessa, on the other hand, is less than pleased about being forced to leave her home, and Bernie's tough rules don't make the situation any more pleasant. I think she's also conflicted because she feels like kind of a poser, like she's from the projects, but now she lives with her big shot celebrity uncle in Southern California. Bernie Mac's wealth and celebrity are actually a big part of the show, by the way. He lives in a big, gorgeous house. By the way, shout out to the set designers for this show. Like, I want to live in this house. There's also a lot of cameos on the show from Bernie's famous friends. Like, it might actually be some kind of record. I've never seen a show with this many celebrity cameos. I mean, they got Stone Cold and Triple H on there. That was enough to get me interested back in the day. But that was just another thing that made this show stand out. You actually get to a point where you're like, I wonder who the celebrity guest is gonna be this time. It was like a feature of the show. But probably the main reason that Vanessa lashes out at Bernie is because she misses her mom.
The firstborn in each family is making a huge patchwork quilt for the oldest in the family. Vanessa, it's too bad your mama couldn't come to the reunion.
Finished.
There's another episode where Bernie takes the family back to Chicago for a funeral, and the kids hope to go visit their mom, but she goes missing from rehab. This is a devastating episode, actually, as Vanessa spends the entire time trying to meet up with her mother to no avail. In fact, many episodes deal with Vanessa's sadness about her mother. Stacy, Bernie's sister and the mother of the three kids, is mentioned frequently throughout the run of the show, but we never see her, unlike other mysterious TV mothers.
And that, kids, is how I met your mother.
It's heavily implied that Stacy is pretty deep into drug addiction and may even be a lost cause, which is kind of dark and depressing. Also, unlike the typical sitcom story where everything works out for everybody at the end of the day. But that sort of situation is the reality for a lot of people. So I commend the show for not being afraid to tackle a harsh subject like that, and to take something that Bernie Mac made up as the premise for a bit and think about it earnestly.
Why does she always do this? Why? Why can't she be like other moms? It's not fair.
I found myself really sympathizing with Vanessa while watching the show. She's in a tough position. See, despite her attitude, Vanessa is essentially a good kid. And honestly, I don't know if you could say the same about her siblings. She's not a perfect angel all the time, but she's got a good head on her shoulders when it matters. Bernie's always paranoid that she's up to no good, doing drugs or having sex, but she never is. So I understand her frustration. Over time, Bernie realizes that Vanessa is under a lot of pressure.
Back in Chicago, she pretty much raised those kids. And if you think about it, she kind of still is.
She's doing a piss poor job at it because those kids running wild.
At least they get to run wild. She never had the chance. I mean, think about it. She's never really been a kid. Let's not rob her of being a teenager, too.
And Vanessa gained some perspective herself from her friends.
How can you take his side?
Cuz you're tripping, and you have been since the minute I got here. I mean, look what you've got. He's great because he obviously cares about you. But as soon as he comes around, you turn into a total bitch.
And from her Aunt Wanda.
I mean, the way Uncle Bernie and I are always fighting. Is it my fault?
Not totally, no. But maybe what the problem is that every time he says something to you, you turn it into an attack.
And ultimately from Bernie when he reveals the true reason he's so hard on her.
You see, you're not the first 17-year-old I had to look after. I had to look after your mother. Unfortunately, I didn't watch her close enough. And I'm not gonna slip up on my job this time.
Don't you think I learned a lot from what happened to my mom, too? When are you gonna trust me to make my own decisions?
That's how I trust you. Just don't expect me to always act like it. Like I don't expect you to do what I always ask you to do. That's who we are. And that's who we're always gonna be.
The Bernie Mac show was one of those shows that the network really didn't know what to do with. Its time slot was moved around a bunch of times, and after a strong start, it was eventually canceled after the 5th season. Unfortunately, they probably would not have been able to tell much more of the story anyway. Bernie Mac tragically passed away 2 years after the show ended at the age of 50 due to complications of a rare disease he was living with called sarcoidosis. He was taken from the world during the peak of what was certainly going to be a remarkable career in Hollywood. Most comedy fans would tell you that Bernie Mac was one of the GOATs. I personally tend to agree, and the Bernie Mac show is an important and I think underrated part of that legacy. Go watch it if you haven't before, it's good. And that's about it. If you can't tell, I like making videos about old TV sitcoms. If there's a show that you'd like me to cover, leave a suggestion in the comments. My last video was about Seinfeld, so click the link on the screen if you're interested in seeing that. But that's the end of the video. Bye bye.